Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee of the 2nd of October. Can I remind members that this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be subsequently available for public listening thereafter. Can we turn to item number 1? Do we have any apologies?
Chairman, we have apologies from Councillors Groom and Prentice, and Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Mail are not present. The apologies. Thank you.
Okay, item number 2. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, can we move on to item number 3 then? Obviously, this meeting today was originally called to consider the cross-service reviews, but there's 2 items that require urgent decisions and information from members, and this is the first of them around the single-use carrier bag charging, the new regulations that have came in from the Scottish Parliament. Can I ask Alistair if there's anything he wants to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members? Do we have any questions? Ronnie?
Obviously, there's, it's welcome. We're trying to reduce the number of bags, plastic bags. This is a law that's coming from the Scottish Government, and it's about pressures that puts in the council. Understand that, that it may come under pressure, budgetary pressure, resources pressure in the future. If that happens, where do we identify the budget from? Will the Scottish Government give us some money for that? Is there a door open? Was there any budget that came from the Scottish Government to implement this as well?
Steve?
Thank you, Chair. No, there are no additional resources at this point in time to go along with this increased responsibility. However, I think the report does outline that certainly in the short term, we're not anticipating that this will have a major impact on our resources. The legislation that's coming into force in Scotland is along very similar lines to that that's already been in place in Wales for some time now, and experience with authorities in Wales has shown that there's had really a very marginal impact in terms of their resources. The enforcement function, which is really what local authorities are required to pick up on under the regulations, in our view, can become part of the regular work that trading standards officers currently already carry out. We already do quite a lot of work in terms of a wide range of consumer protection legislation, for example, where we make visits to retail premises, we maintain a database of all retailers across the region. So we think that certainly in the first instance, we should be able to add that into trading standards officers' current duties without there being a huge impact. However, we will keep that under review, and if it turns out that there is a significant burden that we weren't anticipating, I think one of the recommendations is that we'll bring a fuller report back for members to consider.
Want to follow up, Ronnie?
Yeah, understood the report and understood that, the figures in that. And what my actual question was, if, we are under pressure in, from enforcement officers at the moment, the pressures they have. We had a report earlier on, about the pressures of that department, and we put extra resources into that to cope with that. Now this is extra pressures again, within that department. And if it becomes, and I'm, I understand what happened in Wales and England, etc. But if it does come, will there be an option to go back to the Scottish Government, for example, for extra resources?
Chair, I certainly think that would be something that we would be raising through COSLA. And COSLA have been very heavily involved in this whole process in terms of the negotiations around the regulations and the guidance. And I imagine that if the pressures come to bear on us, that would also be replicated in other authorities across Scotland. So I think probably at that point, any approach will be made back through COSLA, who were involved in the negotiation of this whole arrangement initially.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Jane next. Before I do, can I welcome Jane to our first meeting of the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee. It was also remiss of me not to welcome Craig in his new role as Vice Chair of the committee. I think when people ask awkward questions from over there, what I do is appoint them as Vice Chair so that they can't do that anymore. But welcome to Craig in his new role. But can I bring Jane in? No. Okay, Ian.
Thanks, Chairman. Just in regards to the point that Ronnie's bringing up, I mean, it's someone I picked up myself in the 2.4. It kind of refers to the further report that will come forward. I think in regards to it, I think we've got to be very, very aware of the possible implications for the Dumfries and Galloway Council as we go forward with this. We've got a statutory requirement being placed upon us, but there's no, like as Ronnie's pointed out, quite right, there's no revenue coming with that. Definitely when we get capital money from the Scottish Government and you do a project and it ends up with a revenue consequence to that, and you can find yourself in an awkward position, but we recognise that, we've looked at that carefully through the budgets as time goes forward. So maybe we should be writing the Scottish Government, through yourself, Chairman, in regards to saying this is a statutory requirement, it's been placed upon us, there's no further funding coming from yourselves in regards to that, and there is potential resource implications here, but the fear that lies in the back of my mind, again, if we push for that, will that then start to push Scottish Government down the direction of what they did with Police Scotland in regards to try to nationalise to see savings there? So it's, I think we're between a rock and a hard place here. Again, it really is difficult. Do we ask for the extra money, which most likely, again, to be able to fulfil our duties as a council, it will come to that stage. It will cost extra money to try and fulfil the statutory duty that's been placed upon us. Or do we ask for that, but then it comes back the answer, well, if you work with money, we'll just nationalise and take the service completely away from you. So it's a difficult place to be, Chairman.
Absolutely. Jeff?
Yeah, I very much welcome the introduction of the charge and the fact that it will hopefully reduce the use of carry bags. What happens to the money itself on the basis of what's happened in Wales and Northern Ireland State? How much money is this liable to be? And any funds from this, is that net of any cost which is laid on the retailer?
I don't have any figures for the actual revenue raised in Wales or Northern Ireland, but there is discretion for the retailers to donate the money to charity if they wish, or they may retain the proceeds. If they're of a size they need to retain records, then they can either do that voluntarily through the carry bag commitment with Zero Waste Scotland, or they can retain the records themselves, in which case they are allowed to retain an amount for the cost of the bag and of training and any other cost.
Okay, Jeff?
I'm always concerned when I hear the word discretion being used when it comes down to profits, I must admit.
Okay, Brian?
Thanks, Chair. I welcome Jeff's rationale in terms of recognition of the measures being implemented here. The current statistics, I believe, are around 1,200 carrier bags per person per month being issued at the current time. And I would say that I would expect there to be a reduction in what numbers of carrier bags there would be in rubbish collections and in street cleaning exercises. So there are savings there at the same time as part of the rationale behind this. I look forward to receiving an update report in due course, and I do recognise what Mr. Rogers was saying in terms of the fact that it doesn't appear to have produced additional pressures in England. So we look forward to that report coming back and the positive effects that this measure will have on the environment.
Do we have any other members? I think it's 12 rather than 1,200, unless you've got really big shopping, Brian. 12 per year, yeah. Is it 1,200? Okay, well. Okay then. Any other members? No? Okay, folks, can we go to the recommendations? Are we happy to note 2.1? Okay, are we happy to agree 2.2? Okay, and note 2.3? Okay, and are we happy to note 2.4? Obviously, there's a commitment there to bring a further report as we look to see whether this does have additional burdens. I think it's likely to have additional burdens, but we'll see what the report that comes forward. But our members, in the meantime, happy to note 2.4. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 4? This was the report referred to at the meeting on the 9th of September regarding the Slipway at Stranraer Waterfront. Can I ask Alistair if there's anything he wishes to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members for questions? Graham?
Yep, Chair. I was never a fan of the Slipway project, and obviously any money that's saved is welcome. However, this, in my opinion, this report is in front of us today to justify to members where officers have placed us. The first I learned of revised Slipway dimensions was from a planning application that was submitted. We haven't been kept in the loop on the way through. It has been ongoing for some time. Officers have had plenty of time to bring papers forward and advise us what direction we're going, what their rationale was, and we haven't been informed. Willie Scobie and I have discussed this with the Chief Executive, with the Director, with yourself and the Leader of the Council, with the Internal Auditor, and whilst we've had a degree of sympathy for our feelings on the matter, nothing has changed or improved. So for that reason, both Willie and I have contacted Audit Scotland and asked them to investigate this issue. Now, what the outcome will be, that will be up to them, but I believe it is grave enough that it merits that. The paper makes reference to the boat hoist. That's just putting a marker down to where we are today. I know we are where we are, but I'm not happy with the process, and I know other projects have gone forward where councillors have felt out of the loop and not happy as well. So let's get this sorted out now for the future. The paper points out that the boat hoist is going to cost $275,000. It details the charges that will be levied for the use of it. It details the maintenance costs. But it does not establish the projected usage of such a facility. I mean, if I was, as a farmer, was to build a new grain shed, the first thing I would have to know would be, had I grain to put in it? We're going to spend £275,000 if we agree this today, and we don't know how many boats we're going to lift out of the water. At best, to me, the business case is weak. I think we run the risk of this being Stranraer's version of the Angel of the North, quietly rusting away through inactivity, unless somebody can put figures and prove different to me. Until we are provided with an economic business case that justifies the expense of £275,000, I move we do not approve anything today.
Okay, do we have any other members? Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question in regards to Appendix 4 there, which is on page 37 of the papers. And it's just a question to ask, why is there a difference in cost with the usage of the boat lift on lifting out various boats and relaunching? There's a complete different cost for right the way through there for the different size boats, and I just wondered why there was a difference between actually lifting them out and relaunching.
The charges that we have tabled in the appendices have largely been based on equivalent provision in other marinas as well as our own. Because we have no provision at Stranraer currently for lifting boats and putting them in the water, we've had to take the benchmark from equivalent costs elsewhere. So that's how these costs have been structured. So using the experiences from equivalent marinas on the West Coast and wider afield through Scotland and the UK.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I appreciate that, Jason, but it doesn't sort of explain to us as to why, because it's the same operation as a lift out as a lift back in, and yet there's a different charge for that. I appreciate where you've got your costs from by looking around at other marinas, but it doesn't really clarify as to why there should be a different charge for an out and an in.
Well, I think the assumptions that we've drawn from taking the comparable cost is that there is less involved in putting the boats back in the water than there is taking them out. So it's a technical operational issue.
Okay, I've got Ronnie and then Jeff and then Jim.
No, it's just a comment on, an actual comment on it. You know, I welcome that, you know, Stranraer has this opportunity to have this marina development plan in place, and I also welcome the 500, nearly £500,000 worth of savings on that. And I also think it's, you know, only right that the area committee consider how to use that money. There's been lots of talk about Stranraer and lots of talking down of Stranraer. I think this is an opportunity for Stranraer as well. What I do agree with Graham is that, you know, I think we lack this decision-making process where when we make a decision on capital spend and we don't agree the detail, there's nothing that comes back to committee when the detail's laid out. There's been many projects throughout Dumfries and Galloway like that, and I think that's something that we do need to have a look at, and how we can get members involved in that detail as well, because, you know, some things that come along to committee for that decision look nothing like the finished product sometimes, and that's not healthy for the council.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely acknowledge that, Leader, and we will put alternative processes in place to ensure that what we've learned from recent projects, that members get the appropriate information at the appropriate time. The recommendations given for these projects to be taken forward were very wide and gave us a complete delegation to almost go right through and finish the scheme. So yes, there's lessons to be learned there. We'll acknowledge that that's the case. We'll take that forward.
Can I just make one point clear? It's not just this department.
So, I mean, I think it's a valid point. I think that the decisions of this committee, whether we support them or not, are a matter of public record, and a very wide remit has been given in this project and a whole range of projects in the past. And you know, you cannot change those decisions. The issue is whether or not members do participate fully in some of those particular decisions. But that's not a criticism of previous decisions. That's a criticism of the procedures that are currently in place. And what we need to do is change the procedures going forward, certainly. Okay, I have Jeff and then Jim.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously this has been ongoing for quite some time. I do wonder why the boat hoist wasn't looked at originally as part of the proposals which are coming forward, given the fact that presumably we're still delivering the same level of service but at much reduced cost, which enables us to invest elsewhere. And in 317, I note that the works would start on site in October 2014 for a period of 20 weeks. Well, you do wonder whether that's the best time to be building a slipway in the Irish Channel, given, you know, the problems we've had in slippage in capital projects to date. So can we receive reassurances that this is deliverable in that time period? We don't want to end up with a situation where we're going to continue having slippage due to bad weather.
Jason.
To take the first point first, the reason that we went through the re-engineering of the design was simply to look at a range of alternatives. I think a number of criticisms have come back questioning the cost of the original slipway, and we had a look at the engineering provision and decided that perhaps there was a range of options which included the boat lift. So I think it just came about as a natural course of events that we looked at alternatives, and that the alternatives were proving to be much more cost effective. So that's how that came around. With regards to the programme for the delivery of the slipway, yes, we're all too acutely aware that, you know, moving into the autumn and winter periods for delivering construction isn't the best. The weather is unpredictable at the best of times. There is no perfect time to start, but we are aware of the challenges that commencing work at this time of year poses, and we factored that into our overall programme.
Jeff.
But to a certain extent, this smacks of reinventing the wheel. You know, there must be other projects which you could actually take as our template and said, well, they've got a boat hoist, they've got a smaller slipway. Why don't we look at this rather than go through all the grief of having this very long, expensive slipway as being our first option, and then once we come to a decision on that, then come back and say, well, actually there is a cheaper option which would give us the same level of service. So, you know, I don't accept that we shouldn't have done that in the first place. Is to look to see what other areas are doing in terms of providing the service, and then make a decision on that.
I think the overall process of design and delivery of something that you are looking to grow and that you're starting from a zero base is iterative. I think you don't necessarily come forward with the most preferred option first. You usually arrive at it last. And in that regard, I think that's where we have arrived. This is very much an iterative process. We're looking at things from a zero base. There is no infrastructure particularly provided at Stranraer at the moment. So looking at a range of options is what we have taken away from the various meetings and consultations that we've had with local people, and we've arrived at this particular design solution. So design is not a kind of a retrospective thing. You're constantly moving forward.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It'll come as no surprise that I'm finally glad to see some progress actually being made on this project and others that were attempted to be stalled on several occasions. Just one point on Appendix 1. Take it the areas marked D and C should actually be swapped round about. And as regard the comment about the Angel of the North quietly rushing away, I'll be perfectly happy if the facilities in Stranraer are actually as successful as the Angel of the North in attracting thousands of visitors and millions of pounds into the area.
Okay, in terms of the map, is that? Yeah. Okay, make that change. Okay, got Jane, then Finlay, and then Ian.
Chairman, I think I have to say that I have been watching the developments in Stranraer and being enthusiastic about reshaping how it's to come forward and take its place. But as a new member to this committee and looking for information as to what the justification is for this particular process, the boat lift issue, I have to confess that I am minded to support the local member, Councillor Foster, in this, because it's not entirely clear to me what the costings and advantages are of that level of expenditure, together, of course, with the fact it's going to cost the marina £2,000 per annum out of their revenue costing. I would have liked to have seen some further information about the boat lift. A boat lift arrangement in Kirkcudbright is done with a crane on the back of a mobile truck, and that's been how Kirkcudbright has managed its in and out of the water with boats, and I'm curious not to see this as an option placed in front of members. £275,000 is a lot of money, and I mean, if there are 3 or 4 boats lifted in and out per year, that seems to me not to be a useful way of using public money. So I am minded to support Councillor Foster. I second his motion.
Do you wish to respond to that point? We've got Finlay and then Ian, and then back to Jim.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just keen for things to start moving in Stranraer. I'm sure the folk in Stranraer have the same opinion. We seem to have been bringing reports back for forever. I am, however, concerned that there isn't an economic argument for the investment of £250,000. Even though it's a saving, it would be good to see whether that £250,000 has been well spent and some sort of economic argument that there will be the business and the boats required to make it an affordable and cost-efficient method of taking boats out. And I think Councillor Maitland kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to suggest whether anybody looked at another alternative to a permanent boat lifting equipment.
In response, we have looked at a wide range of options. for the provision of infrastructure. What we are looking at Stranraer is a broad, bold, strategic approach to the regeneration of the town. The town has had its economic engine removed. The ferry operations have moved 6 miles up the way to Cairnryan, leaving the redundant industrial machinery behind at the East Pier. And the master plan that was produced in 2009 looked at a two-pronged approach to the regeneration of Stranraer, which was around increasing the use of water activities and leisure pursuits through increased use of the marina and the harbour, and at the same time having a strategic approach to the redevelopment of the East Pier. If we are going to deliver on the component of improving and increasing the use of Loch Ryan, we have to have a bold approach. We have to make a market that doesn't exist there presently. We have to encourage events, local sailing events and boat events of a national scale so that we can produce the level of critical mass of activity that the town requires. By producing that critical mass, we actually improve and grow the economy of the town. So our ambition has to be set much higher than simply dealing with maybe day-to-day issues of having temporary arrangements in place, because that will not create market confidence. We will not get the confidence of national organisations that will hold national events there, because we will be seen to be not committed to providing the necessary amount of infrastructure needed. And what we have done here from the delivery of the 2009 master plan is look at a bold approach. It's very easy to look at the lowest common denominators and shy away from the big decisions that need to be made. The previous reports that we've had around the Slipway have been around the provision of providing something that was for catering for all things to all people, and we felt that there was a different approach to be had. One thing that we are clear about is that we have to provide a basic level of infrastructure to create the step change in Stranraer that's going to be needed to attract the market. Attracting different boat users and sailors that use the west coast of Scotland, that use the coast of Ireland and further south around Whitehaven, to take a market that has been identified. Stranraer has a niche in that marketplace. It offers sheltered storage and sheltered provision for boat users using the west coast. If we don't create that confidence, then we're not going to create the new market. That's what creating markets is about, and that's what this piece of work is about. And that's why we are putting forward this report, presenting the best possible option to achieve the increase in activity, waterborne activity in the town.
Finlay?
Thanks for that. Yeah, I don't think anybody's lost on that, and I don't think we really need that enforced. Of course, we want to see Stranraer, but maybe a very simple question. We're going to invest £250,000 in a piece of equipment to lift boats out the harbour. I presume you've done some sort of forward calculations. How many boats will be lifted out of the water if all goes well and we have this fantastic opportunity? How many boats have you based the economic argument on being lifted out on an annual basis from the Slipway?
I'd caveat what I'm about to say by the fact that we don't have any provision there currently. So we're not sure as to precise numbers. It would be impossible for me to predict that. But we are confident that the boat lift isn't just about lifting boats out for storage. It's about lifting boats out to carry out defouling and cleaning of boat hulls. So it's a much more dynamic use than simply lifting the boats out of the water. But we think possibly up to 20 boats initially being lifted out, and similar for potential storage facilities. But that might double in terms of boat lift usage if people are simply just lifting the boats out for a temporary period to clean and defoul.
Okay, I've got Ian next.
Thanks, Chair. I perfectly accept what Jason's saying regarding the need for a boat lift. the amount I'll come back to in a minute because it's part of this process, the issue that was mentioned. I know currently that the boats that use Stranraer Marina, they go to Troon to come out of the water, which obviously costs a hell of a lot more, so perfectly accept there's an absolute need for it. Can I just ask about this? Alistair, you mentioned there was something missed in the process initially, and it harks back to what Councillor Foster has said there. What exactly did we miss or should have been done that wasn't done for us to scrutinise properly? I'm a little bit amiss about exactly what part of the process should have been there and would apply to any other projects such as this.
Chair, through you, I don't think I said anything was missed. As far as I'm concerned, the delegation given to myself and my officers to take this through, it was quite clear, and I think I was talking in more general terms, following on from what the leader said. There are lots of details in these big projects as we go forward, and I think it's quite right that we should learn a lesson from the fact that we have to keep members with us on that journey, and we need to come back with details. And if we think about details that I'm referring to in other projects, like the Burn statue, the fact that we changed the direction of buses in the design, that was not a debate that we had with members in the chamber. If we think about Lockerbie, the introduction of our sheep, again, it was a detail of street furniture in the design. It wasn't something that was debated with members. And I think what's been pointed out to us is that these projects are large. They do expend a lot of public money, and the scrutiny and the input from members is paramount, and we need to think about coming back more with the detail on the journey of the design. Don't think we missed anything. We followed the delegation that we had in this case and in these other cases. Maybe there's a new process, a better process, keeping all involved.
Thanks. I mean, I welcome very much the fact that we've now got an extra 500,000 here, but it strikes me that surely a range of options is there at the start of the process, and you end up with one. Should we not have been, I mean, we're talking about value engineering process. If that were done earlier on, we possibly could have come to this conclusion before. It strikes me that there wasn't a proper value engineering process in place at the outset. I'll just ask for your comment on that.
The initial decision was to procure and provide a slipway that was going to be everything to everybody, and that's what committee asked us to deliver. Now, going through the design process, we followed a value engineering process, and I would hope that members would expect us to do that to ensure that we get the best value, outcome with the design. It's once we started all that detail and started designing a very large slipway, which indicated that future revenue consequences, and we've touched on revenue consequences. All investment leads to revenue consequences, and the one large slipway to cope with all sizes of vessel did have very large revenue consequences. That led us to look at other value engineering solutions, and the best solution is the boat hoist for larger boats and a smaller slipway. That's what we as professionals are recommending members to agree and take forward.
I think the issue is, of course, it's not an exact science. I suppose that my criticism, and it's not this project, other projects, has been that members need to be more fully involved to share responsibility, frankly, for decisions that the council make as much as anything else. And it's about getting that balance right. I don't think you get to a stage where where we are today, that level of detail, the fact that it's been out to tender, the fact that the exact costings are in here, you could really get to that stage unless at least an initial decision had been made to progress a particular project, because you'd have to put a lot of resource into something without actually any authority to take a project forward. So it's about getting the balance right, in my view, that we need to make a decision on projects, but members need to be given the fullest information when making those particular decisions. And importantly, as progress is made, as designs are being worked up, they're brought back to members as well for final decisions. on the actual level of detail. It shouldn't be a case of we simply make a decision to have a Slipway, we simply make a decision to regenerate Burn statue without the level of detail coming back to members, either for further decisions or at the very least for scrutiny. I think that's important, is all the way through the process that we need to be given that information, and changes, for example, shouldn't be made without, I think, member agreement. Now, in this case, we're getting member agreement before decisions are changed. And I think that's important. It may not have happened with all other projects, but certainly with this one, at least one way or another, we'll get a member decision on any changes to the original project today. And I think that's important, but we need to build that default position into every capital project the council takes forward. Members shouldn't just simply agree a budget for something and it goes off and then we see the final product. We need to be having member involvement all the way through that particular process. And as I say, it's not an exact science, and it'll be about a judgment being made as to when information is brought back and when it's not brought back. And this, I think, as Ronnie made the important point, this is not specific about this project, this, I think, right across the council in terms of major capital projects, that members need to be there to scrutinise these projects all the way through, make any decisions around sort of detail, and actually share responsibility at the end of the day, because ultimately the public expect us to make decisions, and if we get it wrong, then they can come to us. There's no point in us saying that, well, we didn't know that was going to happen. We need to take responsibility, and we actually need to make those particular decisions. And this is a change that needs to happen right across the council, I have to say. Okay, I think we've got Jim, and then Graham, then Roberta, and then Ian.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in, Chair. Just in relation to the comments that Councillor Maitland and Councillor Finlay made, 3.19 of the report actually makes it clear that the ongoing annual revenue costs for the maintenance of the boat lift can be accommodated within the current operational budget of the marina. 3.7 also makes it clear that because we are not going to be building an all singing, all dancing, everything to everybody Slipway, there will be no need to dredge. That would have been a dearer ongoing revenue cost, I believe, than what the ongoing revenue cost for the actual boat lift is. Personally, I think we've danced around the subject long enough. I move the recommendation.
Okay, can I bring Graham in?
I took great heart from your comments there. I think we're going in the right direction eventually now, or we will be in the future. The matter's very simple. I don't share Jason's enthusiasm or confidence that this is going to be a worthwhile expenditure. I'm pleased we're saving $500,000, but we could be saving $750,000 if we don't put the boat hoist in. The matter's in short compass. If members are content that there's a sufficient business case in front of them today to spend £275,000 on a boat hoist, go ahead. Personally, I'm not content that the business case is strong.
Okay, can I bring Roberta in?
Thank you, Chair. I think it has been explained very, very clearly that there isn't a business case in front of us as such today. But if you look at the wider aspect of the development in Stranraer Harbour, there most surely is a business case. The Harbour Group have been involved right from the beginning, and they're quite expert in what is needed going to sea. And also, we had up until quite recently a group which met, including councillors, to discuss all the details, etc. I certainly don't want to be down the harbour watching every bit of dredging to see if it's been done properly. While I agree the process hasn't been as tight as I would have liked it to be, I can say that I believe that Stranraer has a future. We have discussed this and it's been open to scrutiny. We have examined every single part of the business case, which I was assured when we adopted the master plan as interim planning, was the overall business case for the development of Stranraer. And I just want to see this go ahead as soon as possible. Thank you.
Certainly, if we had a competition to see which item had been debated most in the last 6 months in the council, there would be one winner, I have to say. So scrutiny certainly happened. Ian?
I'll just be brief, Chairman. I mean, I will be agreeing with the recommendations as they've been moved, contained within the report, but I do think if this was in the Annan area, for that matter, in the east of the region, this money would have been spent when it would have been done. There wouldn't have been the same arguments and level of frustration which has been received over in the west of the region. I find that frustrating as a member. I think we should be getting on with this. We do have our political differences in the east of the region, but we didn't stop it affecting the business that goes ahead with the council. We'll keep ploughing on anyway.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Okay, do we have any final memory? I know what the amendment is. It's obviously the recommendation. I just would like to get clarification on the motion from Graham, because at one point, Graham, you said not going ahead with the boat lift. So I wasn't entirely clear whether that meant you were going to go ahead with the slipway, but not the boat lift. And I think I need to remind members that we have a standing decision of the council, which is to take forward this project with a budget of 1.25 million as set out in 3.13. So that's a standing decision. So I just need to get, and what's been recommended is that we go ahead with the project with a budget of 756,000 as set out in 3.13, and that will release the remaining sum of money to be spent on other projects in Stranraer. So that's what we're being asked to agree, change effectively the decision that was taken previously. But we do have a standing decision to take forward the project as set out 3.13. So I just need to be absolutely clear what the amendment's actually saying.
The amendment actually says, in lack of the motion, sorry, in lack of a sufficient business case, that no decision is made to implement the boat hoist at present until one comes before us.
Okay, so that means the rest of the project, slipway, boat storage, access, environmental works, etc., is going ahead.
I'm not the patron saint of lost causes. I'm against them too, but I agree that decisions have been taken upon.
Okay, I just need to get a wee bit of clarification on the EFF grant. I'm presuming that's for the whole project, including the boat hoist, etc., not just slipway.
It's related to slipway, and in this context, slipway and boat lift. Although the context for that was the wider picture, delivering the boat storage area and access.
Okay, but I'm just not too sure of what the implications therefore are of suddenly removing the boat lift from it in terms of grant allocation.
It was subject to going back to the Fishers Local Action Group to review the application we made, which provides a risk that the funding might be withdrawn.
Chairman, can I just interject? The motion was to not agree any of the recommendations in front of us today, as far as I can make out. So I don't know, can't take one part of it out of a tender.
The motion was very simple. There's not a sufficient business case to develop the boat hoist at present.
That wording, of course, wouldn't change the original decision to allocate a budget of 1.25 million towards it, I don't think. But Alistair, do you want to comment?
No, in simple terms, Chair, we could have 775,000 to reinvest in the area if we don't go ahead with the boat hoist, but we go ahead with the slipway. My bone of contention today, and it's up to members, I rarely agree with the majority of them, and I think today is going to be another one of those days. But as far as I'm concerned, there is not a sufficient business case to continue with the boat hoist at present. That leaves the door open for Mr. Sayers and Ewan Green, etc., to come forward with a business case that may swing me. But there's not one in front of me today that will.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. I really do wish that Mr. Green hadn't mentioned the Fisheries Local Action Group, because I'm a member of that group, and I was actually one of those, in fact, that awarded the grant, as it were, to the council in relation to these proposals. So, on that basis, sir, I would take governance advice as to whether or not I am now. The last thing I would want to do, sir, would be to have to regard myself as being debarred from voting in this. But I would take governance advice as to whether or not that reference and the possibility of going back to that particular forum for further funding or amended funding, Chair, debars me today from voting on this item.
Councillor Geddes, it doesn't debar you, but it's always an individual member's choice. But my advice would be it doesn't.
I'm grateful, sir. On that basis, while I would like the fact that, or if it's appropriate, I would like the fact to recognise that I'm a member of the flag. I intend to stay on that basis and will vote on the issue.
Okay, Ronnie.
Same thing. I didn't make the original decision, but I now sit on the flag. So just to record that I'm a member of the flag, but didn't have a part in the original decision. And I'm quite happy to stay and be part of the debate.
Chairman, the motion by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Maitland, is due to lack of a sufficient business case to not agree the boat hoist cost at 275 at today's meeting. The amendment by Councillor McClung, seconded by Councillor Collins, is to agree the recommendations as stand in the report 2.1 to 2.5. Chairman, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Vice Chairman.
Amendment.
Councillor Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Dempster. Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Forster.
Motion.
Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever. Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Amendment.
There are 2 votes for the motion, 14 votes for the amendment.
Okay, members, can we move on to item number 5? Okay, folks, can we move on to item number 5? This is the first 2 of the cross-service reviews that we're going to consider today around roads and network management, fleet management and vehicle maintenance. I'm going to hand over to Alistair, who's going to talk us through the process we're going to follow. We're going to follow a similar process that we had with the previous service reviews, which I think was very successful, whereby officers gave detailed presentations and then we open it up to members. But I'll hand it over to Alistair.
Thank you very much, Chair. We have a number of officers here. I hope members don't think we have too many, but I feel it's very important that each of the review teams are present to discuss with you the details of the reviews. There's been great ownership taken by the team members, and as I say, I think it's absolutely appropriate that they're here today to take your questions. This is the first of 2 reports detailing the cross-service reviews involving DGFirst and Planning and Environment Services. The second report will be taken in private session. That's the one for the Enterprise and Council, as a result of the commercially sensitive information that's contained in that review report. This report presents options identified during the cross-service reviews for roads and network management and fleet management and vehicle maintenance. The agreed outcomes to be achieved were detailed in the Chief Executive's report, end of year report 1314, presented to and approved by full council on the 26th of June. And these outcomes are detailed in paragraph 4.3 of the report. These reviews build on the Planning and Environment Service reviews carried out last year, when the recommendations signalled the need to look at cross-service efficiency, i.e. rationalising the commissioning and delivery structures and bringing together DGFirst and PES into one directorate as part of the Chief Executive's reshaping of our council. The cross-service reviews have been conducted over the last 10 weeks to run in parallel with our council's budget development process. Members will recall the review process which follows our council's service review toolkit, and the process followed is detailed in Appendix 1 to the report. Details of the service review teams are detailed in paragraph 4.8. The unions have been kept well advised of progress and have received an update presentation at the Joint Consultative Group on Wednesday the 3rd of September. Each of the 3 unions, Unison, Unite and GMB, were represented on the challenge panels. Staff in DGFirst and PES have been kept advised through the circulation of weekly bulletins, and these bulletins will continue until the process is completed. Staff have been encouraged to use Dropbox facility for suggestions and input into the review process. Both of the reviews have been scrutinised by challenge panels, as well as the corporate management team, and the reviews have been endorsed subject to comments and amendments being added prior to this formal reporting to committee. Members will receive a comprehensive presentation from the teams shortly. Table 5.2 details a summary of the review savings options. for roads and network management and fleet management and vehicle maintenance. The savings options provide detailed Year 1 budget savings building further for the subsequent Year 2 and Year 3, should members approve the options. These savings are deliverable and sustainable based on the detail presented in the cross-service reviews. Once these options are implemented through the cross-service review action plans and DGFirst and PES merge into one service, work will continue to create further opportunities for efficiencies through further rationalisation of services and management during Years 2 and 3, and further savings are proposed. These additional savings are not referred to or included in the cross-service reviews, and their detailed addressing and scrutiny will be in future years, Years 2 and 3. Taking these additional costs into account, the total savings options are summarised in the table under paragraph 5.10. Members are asked to review the options as detailed in appendices 2 and 3, giving consideration to the deliverability of options together with the actions to progress, and to note the savings options presented, which are available for development by political groups as part of the 15-16 budget setting process. I will now hand you over to Stephen Herriot, the review team leader for roads and network management, who will present his report. And today, Stephen is assisted by Andrew Herd and James McLeod. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. The presentation we're going to run through just now really focuses on the Appendix 2 of the report that's in front of you. So it's the Roads and Network Management Cross-Service Review, and anything in the presentation is really what's contained. It becomes a summary of Appendix 2 of the report for you. The direction of travel for the review for the Roads and Network Management was very much set in the Chief Executive's report to full Council on the 26th of June this year, and it included requirements to deliver a reduction in the number of departments, grouping of functions, services and activities, removing duplication within services and departments, reducing management and overheads, removal of structural commissioning and delivery divisions, and setting the customer first, and enhancing community development and options for community involvement. So that was the kind of context and the framework within which we were taking the review forward. The same committee paper to full Council also contained 6 key outcomes that kind of flesh out these particular issues that were to be delivered, but I'll come to those in terms of the option that we present before you today and how it satisfied these outcomes that were set by full Council. So the scope of the service review within DGFirst, we're looking at the road service under Charles Clemate, and we're looking at engineering design under Andrew Herd. And within P&E, within my own service, we're looking at the infrastructure service under James McLeod, and we're looking at the network strategy service under John Howell. Very much in moving the service forward and working out what the kind of scope and the range of options were that we could develop. We're mindful of the third service review that you'll be presented on today, which is to do with the enterprising delivery arm and how these two services would sit together and operate well together. The scope of budget that I was looking for savings on, that I was tasked with, was about 3.4 million, and the targets are between 5 and 10% savings require a savings target up to about 345,000 in developing the service review for this particular review of roads and network management. Some of the issues that identified for the services through the review process, and particularly that came out in the workshop process, important strategic drivers, the council priorities, and certainly at the time we were looking at the wider range of council priorities, but we're now looking at the new priorities and particularly building the local economy, protecting our most vulnerable people, and being an inclusive council. And 4 of the commitments in particular under there are very much related to the services that are represented in the review and the proposal in terms of the preferred option that we want to take forward. Some of the other issues, we obviously have our infrastructure in a rural region is of a very high priority in terms of movement and accessibility. And we have because of that, we have quite a high political profile in relation to the condition of our roads. The background to the condition of our roads is that they are relatively poor on a national scale, particularly some of our more minor U-class roads. we identify that there's a degree of service duplication in the services that each of those 4 areas that we're reviewing deliver. One of the issues, another issue that we discussed with the kind of capacity for change. There's been a lot of change and a lot of work done within the road service in the past 3 years, and making sure that we move forward and build in that work in any revision to the structures in delivering the road service is a critical part of the service. We also looked at the kind of strategic, tactical, operational interfaces that are right the way through the road service and try to work out where best we actually allocate functions, whether the operational functions should sit within the service delivery arm, being the kind of preferred option that we've moved towards. We also looked at capacity issues and network strategy and engineering design in terms of not delivering some of the strategy that we would like to deliver, and also in recruitment problems within some of the teams and how we might address those. And we're also kind of challenged with consistency across the 4 areas and how we operate, and try to look at ways and developing options and how we make sure that there is a much more consistent delivery of the road service across the 4 areas. So going through the process, the workshop and the service review process, a number of opportunities arise that we want to try and capture within the development of a preferred option. So we're looking at improving links between the roads asset management and other infrastructure asset management functions. We work quite closely with engineering design, but there is still that kind of split in terms of roads and pavement asset management occurs in one service, lighting and structures asset management occurring in another service. And we're looking at starting to try the options and the benefits of pooling that together. We're also looking to kind of strengthen the kind of strategic focus. There's very much within the P&E management team an open for business culture that is pushed through, and we would look to build upon that in any options that we would take forward. What we want to see is bringing strategic functions closer together. A lot of what we do in the road service and the infrastructure service is very much critical to delivering the objectives, as well as the priorities that we have as a council, but also the objectives that are set for the economic development service and for the planning and regulatory service. And we see benefits in a much more aligned service delivery with any options that we develop. There's opportunities in terms of looking at more efficient structures and trying to capture some of the VER interests that are coming forward with the revised offer to staff. And we need to realise those opportunities and try and capture the efficiencies in new structures. We need to address the capacity issues that I mentioned earlier in terms of where there are gaps in the service, whether we take those vacancies as savings or whether we need to plug those gaps in terms of bringing the right experience in to deliver design and to deliver strategy. We need to continue, as I said, the process of improvements in the road service that's taken place over the last 3 years. We need to make sure that continues, and there certainly is an opportunity to build on that. We believe bringing the strategic and the tactical elements of the road service together. And we also see, in terms of building on what happens in P&E, what's happened recently in changes in the planning and regulatory services in terms of rationalising the service. We see an opportunity just to build on the one-stop shop, all statutory consents available, bringing in the kind of roads consenting procedures to that, and a better alignment with what's happening in our planning and regulatory consent processes. So a number of options kind of spill out of that, the kind of issues, the opportunities. A number of options are discussed, and they're almost kind of sub-options that we need to see how we deliver this overall objectives that are set for us in the full council report. So that they're almost kind of sub-options that need to be bolted together to give us the right answer that we think we're coming to. In terms of optimising functional groupings, what we're looking at there is drawing like functions together. We have design in a couple of places, we have network management kind of roles in a couple of places, and we would seek to draw those together for efficiency reasons. That means fewer teams, possible management efficiencies, fewer teams, fewer management resource required, and that's certainly captured in terms of some of the savings that we would be looking to deliver in the review process. We think there's an opportunity to rationalise area management within the road service, moving to a simpler structure there. At the same time, and keeping the kind of community focus, we'd like to have more of a focus on kind of a ward-based stewardship, what we're calling a ward-based stewardship of local roads, and that we would have individuals, inspectors, would be identified with each of the wards that we're operating in, trying to make sure that whatever we do within a structure within the road service and rationalising that we still have this local specialism, local knowledge. Options development has also kind of raised issues with scaling back in some of the aspects of the service that we deliver. And certainly the report identifies at least one area where there's a kind of non-statutory services being delivered that we might take an option on scaling back the delivery of that and realising some of the savings. Strategic commissioning arrangements, there's a bit of work to be done, and the report certainly covers on that in some detail in moving forward. If we bring the strategic and the tactical together, what is the commissioning relationship then with the operational delivery service? We see in terms of the strategic and the tactical kind of simplification and efficiency in the process with one management team dealing with the commissions and reporting to one committee, one service committee on the basis of that. Whatever we do with the strategic commissions, we need to continue to try to be transparent and accountable in delivering those. But I certainly think there's a bit of work to be done in terms of governance issues to be clarified there on the commissioning process. The last kind of bullet point on this slide about the options development was really about the potential for externalisation. And it was something that was considered in the review process, and certainly it was debated at length in the workshop process. And the advice that we had with our kind of facilitators, Deloitte Touche, in terms of models for delivering the service. What we felt in terms of the externalisation is that there's issues with the potential for losing local accountability that might be unacceptable to us at this time. A loss of kind of control and flexibility in the delivery of services. If we specify a service and then are kind of held to that in a long-term contract, we feel there's a loss of flexibility there. There's probably issues with the council being better placed to manage the risk profile of delivering the service and some of the costs that might be incurred with a private sector partner if we were externalising. We're already active with the improvement service and looking at collaboration opportunities. And through the National Roads Maintenance Review, there's been quite a bit of work done trying to draw councils together where there are efficiencies of working across each other with road services. An example of that is the South Ayrshire, East Ayrshire Alliance, where road services have been brought together. And we're certainly keeping an eye on how that progresses and the benefits and savings that they are anticipating delivering over the next 3 years. The advice we're given is that externalisation is probably more beneficial or certainly more efficient once you have your own structure in an optimum state, and that you should be moving towards having an optimum state structure before you then go external. And that the advice we're getting is that you don't externalise because you think you have a problem, you externalise because you have a service that you then want to deliver under a different kind of business model or income stream. So for that reason, the kind of externalisation issues was part in the report and is certainly not recommended as an option to take forward. If I could turn to the preferred option then, just to kind of summarise what we're looking at. We're looking at creating an integrated infrastructure service, greater alignment with the economic development service, the planning and regulatory services I've mentioned, and also kind of having a very strong interface with the enterprising DGFirst service. We'll be looking at relocating the network strategy functions that currently operate within my service, infrastructure commissioning service. We'd be looking at a restructure of the road service to try and gain some of those management efficiencies. There'll be a bit of a staffing review in the infrastructure service as a whole, where we have vacancies, whether we can take those, and also VERs, expressions of interest, if they manifest themselves. We would be looking at capturing those in a new structure. On the delivery of key outcomes, I'll come to that, but that's a kind of graphic, high-level graphic of the preferred option as we see it moving forward. So we have an infrastructure strategy service, a road service, and an engineering service, very much based on the three services coming together. Network strategy within what used to be, or what is currently within infrastructure and commissioning, would partly move into the engineering service to identify some gaps there in resource, and would partly move into the road service to try and bring the network management functions together. I've also shown the environment service, which is out with the scope of this service review, but currently sits within the infrastructure and commissioning service. And that's our kind of strategic approach to waste management, waste collection, contaminated land, is proposed to still sit within the service as a whole. In terms of option appraisal, the slide there really does come back to the 6 key objectives that were set by the Chief Executive, and identifies that we hit most of them on the head, some to a greater extent than others. But we have to realise the key outcomes, objectives for the service review, having to realise budget savings through rationalisation of services, and we demonstrate that in terms of over the next 3-year period, getting up to about 14% savings on the target savings, the in-scope budget that was set for us. The other next objective, implementing an organisational structure that can be sustained for at least the next 5 years. Partly meet that, I think, and I think moving forward, and the wider report talks about future savings in years 2 and 3 in terms of staff costs, and anticipate we would be putting a structure in place from the 1st of April that would be fairly robust, but would have to have the capacity for continued rationalisation of staff resource as we move forward to meet the kind of additional savings targets that are put upon us or suggested within the report. Next objective, focusing on the organisation towards our customers and communities, and we feel that there's better alignment with one management team, one committee, giving us greater accountability, also with the kind of area award-based approach, giving us that better customer interface, local knowledge, achieving the outcomes that members wish, and very much focusing on the kind of economic growth and employment issues that are coming through the new commitments and priorities that are set before us. And then improving the way that our council works really is about sorting out and improving the commissioning and delivery arrangement that we would have between the new proposed services. The summary table of the savings, these savings are mostly on staff costs, so there's some reliance on VERs progressing, but the savings totals at the bottom, certainly in year 3, exceed the 10% target, which equated to about 345,000 by some way that they managed to exceed that target. But that's a kind of range of options within that table that can be taken forward as we move towards this preferred option of bringing the services together. So the preferred option achieves savings. We believe it brings better functional groupings. We've talked about a more efficient management structure and the potential in future years to slim that down. We believe it gives a better strategic focus and customer focus and simplified accountability for managing the road network service under one committee. And we believe it supports the creation of the enterprising delivery arm in releasing them to achieve the objectives that have been set for them. And we would see very much aligning with the wider council priorities in the preferred option that we want to take forward. So the report concludes with a number of recommendations that we put before members. That's to do, the first recommendation is the integration of the road service, as we've discussed. Second recommendation is really that we pull together a structure that we then can see the way forward to try and achieve future savings in future years as required in the budget setting process. And the final recommendation, there is a vision statement for the existing infrastructure and commissioning service, which is to provide and maintain infrastructure and transportation networks to progress the council's economic and sustainable development strategies, including the safety and well-being of communities. And we very much see this new service more fully realising and trying to deliver the aspirations of that vision in a new infrastructure service.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen. There's obviously, as well as Stephen's presentation, a considerable amount of detail in the papers before members. So you have an opportunity to study, so can I open it up to members' questions? Okay, Ian?
I suppose just to kick off, Chairman. Just for Stephen, listen, thanks very much. That was an excellent presentation, to say the least. It was really good, very informative. A few things, if possible, just to elaborate and go a little bit further into, if possible. You have touched on open for business. What do we actually, Ken, if you could just build on that a wee bit more, what do we mean by that? Does that mean potential growth in regards to the different contracts and that we can potentially bid into? Ward-based, I guess to the local roads, ward-based stewardship and rationalisation area framework. Just if you could, a wee bit more on that as well, Stephen, because I feel there's been a couple of stages we went through. Just the last stage we went through is getting quite settled now and getting into place and working quite well. So I wouldn't like to see that being upset either. And the non-statutory service as a potential saving. Just what exactly do you mean by that? And see DG design or engineering services. I think it was reported at DGFirst this week. It came back as a flat cash. There was no profit, no anything there. So what benefits do we get for that service? It's non-statutory, most of that, I think. So there will be benefits there, I'm sure of that. In fact, I've heard them before, but I'd just like to kind of touch on them as well, please, Stephen.
I could, yeah, just elaborate those points, Councillor Carlos, through the chair. Open for business in terms of philosophy is very much kind of aligned with it's a kind of mantra at some of our management meetings that we're open for business, that we can do in terms of development. And I think it's about facilitating the sustainable development that's desired by our regulatory planning and regulatory colleagues, but also the economic growth that's very much pushed by our economic development colleagues. And I think the open for business attitude is that we want to facilitate appropriate development and want to make that as readily accessible as possible. Within this service, it's not about being competitive to a certain extent. I certainly leave that in terms of the competitive edge to the proposed new enterprising service. But it's about facilitating that enterprising service as well to be able to deliver a return as required as an option in terms of the budget process. So open for business is about facilitating what we need to do to stimulate the economy, to provide sustainable development. How we best can do that, not being a regulatory barrier, but being a regulatory enabler, I would imagine. It really is the way that we would move forward. The ward-based stewardship is probably a bit of a grand title, but really to elaborate on that is very much about if we do change the structure within DGFirst, and that's certainly in the road service, and that's certainly the way that we're kind of being moved towards in terms of efficiency savings and letting staff go when VERs are expressed as an interest, and being able to plug gaps where they are created there in terms of experience and location and structure. But the ward-based stewardship is an attempt to kind of get an anchor into the local areas. We would want one inspector to have particular responsibilities for a ward. He might be a conduit for member inquiries. I would imagine still member inquiries would still come in at other levels in the structure as appropriate in terms of the nature of the inquiry. But what we would see is that we would have a go-to person that would be accountable for a particular area. They would have the knowledge of the maintenance operations in some detail that we want to take forward. They would be responsible for the inspection activity that takes place in those ward areas. It might be we allocate one individual to a ward, or we maybe allocate one individual to a couple of wards. We just need to kind of crunch the numbers on that in terms of a new structure. So rationalising the area framework, I think there's opportunity moving forward in terms of certainly one of the objectives that's been set for us is to have a long, hard look at the management structure. And there's all the kind of push in terms of the budget process to just see where that can be slimmed down. And I think that needs to be accommodated over the next 3 years in terms of the savings that we're looking at achieving. Certainly one of the savings that we've set before members is about 130,000. That would be the realisation of savings on 2 service manager level posts without being specific. And that would require the kind of structure within the road service and the other parts of the infrastructure service to have a hard look at in terms of how we deliver that. Non-statutory services in terms of withdrawing a level of service or reducing a level of service. What I'm thinking at there is one post in particular, one activity that is non-statutory. We flagged it up in last year's service review of my service, and that's very much to do with active travel and advice to people to encourage active travel. And it might be that's certainly one of the savings options, and the detail on that and the implications is set out in the last part of my report, appendix 7 or 8, whatever the last appendix is within my report, sets out the detail of the options on that. In terms of engineering design, you're right, it's a kind of level budget. They operate on a trading account, but what we put in, we get out is very much, they're a critical resource. We see them very much as a critical resource within my service as it currently stands for delivering projects. Colleagues in economic development would say the same, I'm sure, in terms of that resource being accessible to deliver a lot of the capital works that we take forward as a council. Because they operate in a trading account, there are not particular options that come forward in terms of realising savings. I don't believe there's any savings in reducing that staff resource, and that staff resource needs to be set at a level. We're talking about 20, 25 professional technical staff there, providing a service on a time charge basis. That level of resource needs to be set to actually accommodate the work that we have moving forward, and being able to provide that very quick service to the council that we can call upon them for, and also complement some of the functions, the asset management functions we do, as well as some of the new design work that we do. So we see that being a critical element of the overall service, drawing that kind of engineering, roads, infrastructure, all those functions together.
Okay, Jane?
Thanks, the point was covered.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd also like to thank the level of detail that's in the presentation. However, there's just a couple of things that I would just like to make sure in my own mind. The savings options that are presented at 5.2 and explained a little bit more at 5.10, and then are also shown in Appendix 7 for page 155 onwards. Can I just say clarification that some of the stuff that has been discussed during the process is not, or if it is included in the actual savings that we're looking at, the ones I'm particularly talking about is it discusses the opportunity to review the number of depots. It also mentions the dreaded words, car parking charges at one point in the place, and there's also one that does really concern me is reduce council winter services in area where resilience scheme is in operation. I take it none of those three, they were just points of discussion, which is fine, everything has got to be discussed, but they are not part of the money that you're looking at saving and the savings options that are given out.
I could just come back, Councillor McClung, on that. These aren't part of the savings that we're looking at within the service review. I think they're identified in the scoping paper that forms a large part of the appendices to my report, as other budget templates that have come forward to members, and in time they'll be part of the budget setting process. Within the review we've carried out, page 61 of the report that's before you sets out in detail how we seek to achieve, or the options that we're putting forward to members in terms of achieving the £468,000 savings that are very much associated with this review of the Roads and Network Management Service. And as I said, it is really focused on primarily staff costs, with some savings in some of the budgets, for one of them being bridges inspections, which does equate back to staff costs again through the trading account, and the flood risk management budget, a minor reduction on that.
Any other members? Okay, Ronnie?
It's a similar point to what Councillor Crothers said about the ward stewardship. Annandale South, sorry, be parochial, has Clarencefield in it, which is administered by Nithsdale, so there's a grey area there that you might want to consider. The other thing was, I appreciate that you want to have a bigger focus on external income, if that's the right word. However, there's got to be a balance here between the demands that we have as a council for road repair and bringing in external funding, because you only have one set of guys doing the same sort of job, you know, so there has to be a balance there, and I'm sure you'll be considering that.
I think that last point particularly is about how the commissions need to develop, or whatever the terminology was we used, just to define that relationship that we have with the service delivery, enterprise and service delivery, about the priority that needs to be given to council operations, council works. And certainly we envisage being within the one management team, that is probably a much slicker process to take that forward. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll cover the detail in terms of when, you know, we work out a detailed structure. If, you know, there are kind of cross-boundary issues, we can look at how best that's resolved. Whether we sub-split within wards to match area operational, but it will very much come down to whatever structure that we put in place for that, the road service in particular, whether we move to a west and an east structure rather than four area days.
Okay, thanks very much. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. In the report, under the key issues and opportunities, page 54, we mentioned that, and as you've said in your presentation, Steve, as well, that the condition of the region's roads and other infrastructure assets presents a significant challenge. And the roads defects generate substantial customer concerns, and our performance in addressing these is subject to close scrutiny. And it is important to maintain or improve performance during periods of change. And I was just wondering what sort of systems we might have in place at the moment to deal with the staff concerns, because obviously as the review's going forward, we are talking about reducing staff numbers and that. So what sort of monitoring or systems we have in place here to make sure that during this period of change, the staff that we have working on this, and especially in the roads department there, will keep the productivity and the performance of their work related to that particular service moving forward during that. I mean, yeah, you do mention it and you do say it's a challenge, but I just wondered, because staff are going to be really concerned about the fact that some of them may be leaving the positions, and I know we're hoping that those that do are going under the VER process, etc. So, but just a sort of reassurance that that we realise this, and during this review, staff are obviously going to be concerned about these sort of issues, and how we will make sure that they're focusing on their job in the meantime until this comes to its conclusion.
I think it's very much about kind of staff consultation to a certain extent. That's been taken forward with the bulletins that have been issued, probably not with a lot of detail on the options. Once we were ready to publish these options and put them before members, we did have a bit of a staff engagement session, made sure that we briefed staff in terms of the way that the review was going. The review was kind of carried out with a kind of very set of objectives to deliver, and you know, very quickly we came to ideas and conclusions as a review team, and the kind of wider review teams working together across the 3 reviews as to how that new structure might roll out. But it's only just been recently we've been able to communicate that to staff. And you're right, there are some staff that have raised concerns already, particularly when you start to look at savings on staff budgets and moving forward with those. But I think it's very much, we talk in the report about an implementation team. I would manage a number of service managers taking forward the implementation of a revised structure, pulling towards this preferred option. But I think there's very much down to that implementation team to communicate more fully with staff now in terms of how we move forward. It's voluntary redundancies that we're looking at this present time, so it's very much in staff's hands. That, you know, if the business case works for them, the business case works for the council. But it's just capturing those that do want to exercise that option to realise these savings. And you're right, we have to address motivation issues in terms of change processes for staff. And particularly the report recognises there's been a lot of change within the road service already. But we need to manage that process to make sure that we don't impact on service.
Okay, folks, move on to the next one. The only point I would make is, oh, sorry, Ian, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chairman. It's only just visited Stranraer Council recently, and some of them sat with, it wasn't even zero base, it was minus. I just wondered if that's something, one department in particular sat was minus 450,000, I think. Had to work towards zero as it went forward. Is that anything we've actually looked at in regards to part of this budget process, starting with a zero base budget?
It's certainly not within the scope of my review. It's my review sets out an appendix. I think it's appendix 3. There's a spreadsheet. Appendix 2, sorry. There is a spreadsheet that sets out the budgets that I was working with within the activity-based budget and the staff budgets, and the target was the kind of 10% savings. In terms of delivering that and how that manifests itself if members choose to take that option, I would imagine my budgets going forward will be reduced by that amount, and it will be down to service management team to deliver those savings over the 3 years. But if the budget savings are taken, then it'll be for us to move forward and realise those savings.
Very much. I mean, certainly this is absolutely the direction of travel that the administration wants this to be taken forward. I have to say, I think it offers up an awful lot stronger governance regime around the idea of a single structure, a single management team reporting to a single service committee. It obviously offers up the budget savings options that we're keen to have, and I'm particularly enthusiastic about the whole concept of a far more localised network management structure in which people have effectively a one-stop shop to raise and ward issues, and actually that have a network management system in place that really does look at the issues quite literally on the ground. So I'm certainly enthusiastic about this, and thanks very much to the team that have worked on this. I certainly don't detect any objections at all to the work that's been done from members. Much appreciated. Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move on to the second review around fleet management and vehicle maintenance.
Well, thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now hand over to Harry Thompson, who's the review team leader for fleet management and vehicle maintenance, and today he's assisted by Shelley.
So it'll come out during the course of this. It's sod's law, it happens just when you go to do a presentation. So the cross-service review of fleet management and vehicle maintenance on a similar basis to the others was undertaken following the Chief Exec's report to the Council on 26th of June. And like the others reviews, it had the 6 objectives shown on the slide in mind. I think the thing we need to bear in mind for expenditure on fleet is that whilst direct expenditure between the two services runs at just under £2.25 million, wider fleet and transport costs within the council run to just under £8.4 million. So there's a much wider indirect spend on fleet and transport within the council than just within the two services under review. Cross-service review anticipated some efficiencies through merging the two functions of fleet management and vehicle maintenance. Whilst there is some scope for this, and perhaps more importantly, through much closer and joined-up working with the NHS, the greatest opportunities for improving the management of the council's vehicle and plant fleet comes from using our service functions to assist managers within all departments to reduce their vehicle holdings and to increase utilisation. Just a little bit of context. The report outlines some benchmarking data for the services, though because of the variation in the makeup of Scotland's local authorities, it can be quite difficult to highlight effective fleet usage. But I've attempted to illustrate comparisons with a number of similar authorities where data was available. So Highland, Aberdeenshire and Scottish Borders as the more rural authorities in terms of makeup. But we also looked at East and Bartonshire, which was held up as a good practice authority through the Association for Public Service Excellence. The data shows that Dumfries and Galloway has a high allocation of vehicles across all staff and also a high number of vehicles maintained per mechanic. And both of those, so one seems to show an inefficiency and the other an efficiency. A lot of vehicles to each member, or few members of staff across the whole authority to each vehicle, but each vehicle is each mechanic within the authority maintains a high number of vehicles. Both of those may be related to the relatively low number of HGV vehicles within the fleet, and that's perhaps because of our investment in the corporate car pool over the last few years. This has seen a reduction in grey fleet mileage, the non-direct fleet. Grey fleet, which enables staff to travel of about 3.5 million miles since 2008-9, and that's a net reduction of about 1.8, 1.9 million miles, taking into account the mileage incurred by the new cars within the corporate pool. Our management overhead is round about the median point for the comparator authorities. Aberdeenshire shows a very low management input, whereas East and Bartonshire shows a relatively higher one, and we are round about the same mark as Scottish Borders and Highland. So the service has been recognised as a good practice model authority in previous years, being awarded the Association for Public Service Excellence's Fleet Service of the Year team in 2011, and the Green Fleet of the Year Public Sector Award in the same year, both of those at UK level. During the review, we looked at savings initiatives and service improvements undertaken in other areas of the country, and it's clear that most of the initiatives being undertaken elsewhere are either in place in Dumfries and Galloway or are being developed or are now proposed for development. For example, Cumbria County Council is seeking to engineer significant savings this year through the development of a corporate carpool, which is already in place here, and further through reductions in vehicle holdings across departments, which is recommended within the review. There have been some significant savings achieved within fleet in previous years as well, but the review team is confident that more can be engineered. So the vision for the service arising from the review, excuse me, is that it will deliver the public sector's fleet service for Dumfries and Galloway. And this will require strong central control over fleet policies and procedures, as well as effective management of procurement, both for short-term hires and for purchases, and at all levels, from HGVs, bin lorries and buses, down to small plant and equipment. So you're talking down as far as the likes of strimmers and lawnmowers. And the service will seek to reduce the asset base to the minimum required to deliver services, whilst maximising the utilisation of the fleet retained across all services. The key tools that would need to be used to achieve this will be effective policy development, planning and communication with service departments, and the use of information derived from utilisation and monitoring to inform further planning and management of the fleet. So the areas set out for development within the report are as outlined here. So the first off is a further reduction in staff travel budget reductions. There has been some assumed reductions within budget planning already, and those included bringing service managed cars within the corporate pool to further control utilisation, removal of essential user allowances for those remaining staff, and those are teaching and chief officers essentially, and promotion of travel awareness. More can be done, and that will involve pre-authorisation of travel. So staff don't travel until they're authorised to do so. Better reporting to management. There has been developments in terms of reporting to management over the last couple of years. The Corporate Business Support Group has played its part in taking that out to departments, and that's seen continuing reductions in terms of the grey fleet travel, the staff travelling in their own cars, and greater movement over to the corporate car pool. There's more can be done in terms of development of IT systems to assist in management of travel, and both in terms of managing what staff are allowed to do, but also in terms of enabling management to better monitor what staff are doing retrospectively. And we're suggesting that 100,000 a year can be engineered out of the staff travel budgets for the next 3 years. In terms of vehicle tracking procurement, vehicle tracking is something that's been in place for the last three years or so, and that's been used to manage the way the fleet moves around the region. It's useful both from an efficiency point of view, but also from a health and safety point of view. In terms of lone workers out in vehicles, we can monitor where those vehicles are, but also it enables us to react to any information coming in from the public, as well as to how vehicles are being utilised. The new contract for vehicle tracking is now in place, and that will save over the next 3 years 21, 29 and 43,000. Integration with the NHS is an area where we're suggesting there could be further savings. We've provided, under the service level agreement, the Council has been providing fleet management services to the NHS in Dumfries and Galloway, again for the last 2 or 3 years. But there is an appetite within both the NHS and the Council, I think, to step that up and to bring the fleet together on the part of both organisations, so there's greater cross-utilisation of fleet between the Council and the NHS. At the minute, our insurance arrangements don't allow staff from the NHS to drive Council vehicles and vice versa, and we can I think, look to improve on that, to bring systems together and to better enable utilisation of fleet, drive down the fleet holdings that we have, and make the use of the fleet more efficient. So that, in particular, I think for the likes of staff who may drive in the evenings, we can enable access to Council fleet on the part of NHS staff in particular. But the core functions of the service that's suggested would be ensuring operator licence compliance, ensuring the roadworthiness of the fleet, ensuring that drivers across both organisations are more effectively managed, but also that they're trained effectively, so they're better enabled to use the vehicles appropriately. Development of fleet policy consistent fleet policy across the organisations, and development development of better asset management planning arrangements. We're suggesting there a saving of 40,000, and that's essentially staff saving through bringing the two services across the council together. It's a fairly low level of saving, but there's fairly low levels of staff involved within the fleet management services across the council. And this is more about enabling wider savings, I think, across both organisations and driving the type of savings that we've looked at in terms of the staff travel and the one that's the one to come in terms of reducing vehicle holdings. There's a proposed saving associated with the introduction of salary sacrifice for essentially for car leasing for staff. These are arrangements that are in place elsewhere in the country, and essentially it's like the same as cycle purchase that staff, or cycle hire that staff currently have access to, and also childcare scheme that staff are now have access to, which gives them the ability to hire a car over a period of time, and that's deducted from salary at source. So staff benefit from reduced tax and NI payments, and the council benefits from reduced NI payments. The suggestion is that for I think for an uptake of 100 staff, we could engineer savings of around about 35,000 per year. That's something that needs to be entered into to see how far it works, how appealing it is to staff. But certainly indications from elsewhere are that it is an appealing scheme, and we have access to salary sacrifice through framework contracts available elsewhere, so that could be introduced fairly quickly in time for the new financial year. And we can also engineer savings through the vehicle maintenance tyre procurement arrangements of £17,500 a year. Those could be implemented immediately too. So the other area where we're suggesting there is a significant opportunity for reduction in costs is through centralisation of the control of vehicle budgets. Essentially what we're looking at there is a major review of fleet holdings across the council, across all services, within all departments. Historically, there has been an approach whereby services and departments and units within services tend to look at their vehicles as their vehicles. Each service, each unit has its own mini fleet in effect. So what we'd be looking at is the council fleet being seen as just that. So that if a service needs a vehicle, then it approaches there's an arrangement through the fleet manager that it has access to that vehicle. It'll be done on a planned basis, so the fleet manager will engage with services to discuss their needs through the planning horizon, and arrange to shape the fleet appropriately, but shape the fleet such that it's set at the minimum level required. And if departments or services then need further access to vehicles, that has to be negotiated, and they will have to demonstrate a clear need for it. At the minute, there is probably too much in terms of vehicles sitting unused at specific times, and they could be better deployed across to other services, both across the region and across departments. So we'd be encouraging services to share the vehicles, to maximise the utilisation of vehicles, and all procurement and maintenance of all fleet assets from HGVs down to small plant and equipment would then be directed through fleet management and the vehicle maintenance unit to reduce our investment costs. And we're suggesting savings of 235 and 235,000 in 16-17, and a further 235 leading to 470 in 17-18. And that's around about 5% per annum across the variable cost of fleet. So it's achievable. It should be achievable through this process. Further reduction proposed through reducing staff use of vehicles. Council policy is essentially to restrict use of vehicles to those that are working from home. Home to base use of vehicles to those that are working from home or those that are on call, and that needs to be addressed in a more rigid manner. And we think there's about 30,000 at least to come out of that. It needs needs a review across all departments, but certainly 30,000 is a low-end estimate of cost savings there. In terms of the review, there are other factors that, excuse me again, other factors that need to be taken into account. There are significant opportunities for the fleet service through the move to joined up corporate and inter-organisational working to engineer those savings. But the other issues, the cross-service review has not assumed any savings arising from better utilisation of the fixed assets associated with vehicle maintenance, so the depots and the plant associated with vehicle maintenance in the garages. There are opportunities associated with bringing in additional workload from external clients, but these are dealt with under the Enterprising Council Service Review. But the Council will need to ensure that its own needs are prioritised within the fleet and vehicle maintenance services. We have a responsibility to ensure that our fleet complies with road traffic regulations, and in particular, the Traffic Commissioner has a significant interest in the O-licence fleet, the operating licence fleet, and those are subject to regular checks by VOSA, and we need to maintain the condition of the fleet. There is an identified need within the review as well to ensure that IT systems used by the services are used most effectively and with minimal duplication, and there's issues that need to be drawn out there over the next year or so. And there's also a need currently being addressed to ensure consistency of internal charging to departments to ensure that the cost of maintenance of the fleet is appropriately charged through the Council's accounting systems. But this shouldn't really impact on the overall cost of the service. So, overall savings arising from the review can be broken down broadly as 130,000 rising to 800,000 from better use of the fleet. Those are the top three rows. And then 73,500 rising to 95,500 from improved procurement. And as I say, a relatively low figure, £40,000 from integration, service integration. Given the low staff numbers and the low supervisory administrative support levels and the role of fleet, the future role of fleet suggested in terms of controlling corporate costs, I think the 40,000, whilst low, is probably about as far as it's safe to go, as I say, given the role that the department, the service will have to play in terms of controlling fleet costs in the future. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thanks very much indeed, Harry. Yeah, Brian.
Page 174 of 224, 3.4 vehicle tracking procurement. Can I just check? Harry gave figures of 21, 29, 43, where we've got figures here of 21, 8 and 14. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies, there are inconsistencies in terms of the way they're presented, but they are cumulative figures in the report. So it's 21 plus an additional 8 plus an additional 14 in the third year.
Okay, can open up to other members for questions. Ian.
Appreciate the work you and your staff have put into this, Harry, just as was acknowledged for the previous report. Can I just ask about this, the integration of services with the NHS? I mean, given the amount of time we've been spending talking to the NHS on the Community Health and Social Care Partnership Board, and the fact that, in fact, I think I actually raised this issue about 3 years ago, about having an inventory of what the NHS had and what in terms of property and resources and whatnot, and we got a relatively comprehensive answer from NHS, but I find it's very disappointing that the best we can actually manage through integration of services with NHS is 40,000 a year for the next 3 years. I would at least have expected that to start rising. I mean, there must be opportunities with integration of maintenance facilities, joint use of property, and so on. There must be more opportunities there where we can. I mean, it seems to me as if we're not even talking to the NHS about this. I find this very disappointing. I think there are probably incredible opportunities here, as well as the wider issue of property or asset management, and I just don't think it's being exploited It's no criticism of you, Harry, but I just think this is an issue that, with integration going forward, really needs to be looked at.
As I said during the presentation, the 40,000 that we're suggesting through service integration is relating to our own internal staff costs within the council's fleet services. There will be opportunities through that joint working, for example, potentially, to deliver more maintenance service than currently to the NHS, and that's really tied into the opportunities through the enterprising council and vehicle maintenance services role in that review. So what we've been trying not to do is to double count those savings or additional income through both reviews.
Do we have any other? Ronnie?
Yeah.
Jim and then Ian.
It's a centralisation of the fleet budgets, and in 3.9, we'd like to get to a position where the managed by fleet on much the same lines as the corporate car pool. I've been reliably informed there's certain pool cars never turn a wheel for weeks on end. Now, I haven't seen a report recently of usage in that, but I'm told, without naming names, by staff that they can't get a car, yet the cars are sitting there not being used. So if we're going to expand this, we need to get a better control of how the cars are operated. If there's cars sitting there not doing anything for a couple of days and somebody needs one, why can't they get one? You know, and simple things like that. It may just be an administration error. I don't know what it is, but I'm reliably informed that there is, and if it's happening in the east, it may be happening here and in the west. So how do we get a handle on that, and so we can expand the usage?
Chair, we do receive these reports from time to time, and generally when we look at those, we find evidence that the vehicles have been used. They may not have been used when the people reporting it have been looking physically at the vehicles, but there has been utilisation of it, and we can verify that through the vehicle tracking system. So we know that the vehicle has moved, and we can see that on the computers. It wouldn't be a mirror image of the pool car system, because quite clearly services will generally use vehicles for a high proportion of the time, whereas the corporate car pool, the vehicles in the pool are used across all services on quite a variable basis. So it won't mirror it exactly, but there is that potential to better utilise and share vehicles across services. As I say, both across service functions and geographically, so that, for example, a van may not belong to the property maintenance unit or the roads unit. It may be shared by those services, or it may be shared between the Annandale and Estill unit of roads and the Wigton unit, depending on where it's required to be utilised. Now, that's, you know, it's something that's going to take time to develop, but there are significant opportunities, we believe, to drive the cost of vehicle utilisation down.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's regarding the workshop working practices and the possibility of going to 7-day working, etc. It says in there that such a move, however, will require renegotiation of staff contracts and single status type arrangements. I noticed that on page 210, 211, mention is made of staff that were to paid into workshops, and the fact that that caused some consternation at the time regarding the differences in contracts that the two-paid staff come in between them and the council. Would such a renegotiation of contracts to a single status type, would that remove that anomaly if it took place?
The purpose of entering into those kind of negotiations would be to remove the anomalies and to provide a better basis for working. But I mean, I think it's more an issue for the cross-service review, but in order to better utilise the workshops, which are essentially used during the working day and during the working week at the minute, there are opportunities to increase utilisation of those evenings and weekends, but that would require a renegotiation of the existing contracts, both for
for the TUPID staff and for the existing craft staff.
Okay, I've got Ian Crothers then, Ian Dick again.
Thanks, Chairman. Just in regards to the vehicle tracking again, Harry. One of the points I noticed as you were going through, I think there's two parts to that savings. One's in the contract that's been renegotiated, and another one, I just wanted you to tell us what the other parts were. You said efficiencies could be found. I think part of, like, I don't know if you understand that fully, but part of what you said, I understood, was that the contract, with savings on the contract over the next 3 years as part of a renegotiation. But what are the other, how do we save money otherwise?
No, the savings outlined for vehicle tracking are quite specifically savings associated with the new contract. We've changed suppliers, and the cost of the contract will reduce by those amounts.
Thanks, that was my misunderstanding. Thank you.
Okay, Ian Dick now.
Thanks. Just in relation to my remarks before about the joint use of the fleet with the NHS, it's just been pointed out to me, quite an interesting comment on page 187, when we're looking at considering potential options. There is a section in the third one down there, explore the joint use of the fleet with the NHS. Further along in achieving outcomes, an interesting comment which suggests that conflict management skills will likely be required. Don't necessarily want to ask you to comment on it, but that's interesting.
That's not necessarily associated with the NHS. It may be associated with other issues within the report.
Okay, Jane.
It's page 182. It's looking at the key challenges facing the fleet management and vehicle maintenance service on page 182. And under the column at the end there with the policy, I go down to the suggestion that profit consideration can't make a profit from the council. Could you possibly expand on why that comment is there and what is actually meant by it?
Again, it's something that relates to some extent to the enterprising council, and it's not really an issue that's been developed within this service review. The two service reviews are dealing with different issues, and that this one is looking at the potential for better working within the fleet management and vehicle maintenance service for the council and for the public sector fleet, whereas the cross-service review on enterprising council is looking at ways of better maximising the return from the investment in vehicle maintenance service. So it was really teasing out to some extent the tension that there might be between the requirement for vehicle maintenance as a trading unit, as an enterprising unit to increase its return, and the need for the council to ensure that it's getting best value from the resources. And I don't think there's any suggestion, there's certainly no suggestion that the vehicle maintenance unit would be looking to profit from the work it does for the council. That will generally, and part of the role of fleet management in relation to vehicle maintenance, is to ensure that the costs that services pay for vehicle maintenance reflect the inputs that vehicle maintenance put in. But certainly we wouldn't be anticipating that the trading unit would be taking profit from the council services.
Okay, no other members? Okay. Thanks very much, folks. And again, thanks for the work that's gone into that and the significant information that's been given to members, provide us with options as we take this forward. Okay, folks, before we move on to the final one, can we just go to the recommendations on the two that we've looked at the moment? I think it's fair to say that we've reviewed the information before us, so are members happy to agree that the first recommendation? Okay, and to note the fact that obviously we'll be taking this forward as part of any group's budget proposals, choose to do so. Okay, thanks. Okay, item number 6, I don't have any other business, so if we can move on to item number 7. Obviously, we've been asked to agree take this matter under the Local Government Scotland Act as an excluded matter, so members happy to agree that.